Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and I followed through with my plan to bring Salah in for Diogo Jota last game week, who managed to bang an 11-pointer with only 62 minutes on the pitch across the two fixtures. Now, unfortunately, he was actually only awarded 46 minutes in that first game inside FPL, which means he actually missed out on the additional point for playing 60 minutes. Now, I did catch the rule clarification at the beginning of the year that was stating that additional time would not be added on inside the FPL game. But hopefully they fix this next year, as they're actually missing out on about 15 to 16 minutes worth of game time here, which is actually quite significant, especially if you consider the loss of clean sheet points if this were to happen to a defender. Now, my thoughts are that they changed the rules about football and how they were actually going to calculate additional time, and so it was probably just a programming. They didn't have enough time to program it into the FPL games. Hopefully that'll be fixed next year. But anyway, he was brought on in the 44th minute in the first half for the stretchered off Diogo Jota. You do not like to see that at all. He played 8 minutes of additional time in the first half and 7 minutes stoppage time in the second. So that's 15 minutes of stoppage time right there. 2 minutes in the first half, the 45 in the second half. That was 62 total. Anyway, but now I am looking at the prospects of selling Salah for a hit, as he does look to have re-aggravated his hamstring issue and doesn't actually have a fixture this week. However, there is also the De Bruyne issue to consider too, as he completely missed out on the second game in the double. So before we get started, if you like the following content, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. So Salah out. Right, so this is how the team is lining up at the moment with no transfers. I've currently got 10 playing and 1 free transfer in the bank, but I do have triple Newcastle defence away to Arsenal. I'm not too concerned about that, as if you could find a defender at about the 4.4 to 4.6 million price point that's keeping a clean sheet, please let me know who they are, because they do not seem to be happening at all. This is why my strategy has been for the last few game weeks, or quite a few game weeks, is just to focus my transfers in attack to try and pick up those players that are banging in the goals, and I've just completely given up on clean sheets. Burn and Botman do come with some pretty good set piece threat. It also does mean, though, that I would be playing Semenyo at home to Man City, who actually scored a great goal last weekend, getting himself an 8-pointer and the 2-2 draw away to Newcastle, playing only 77 minutes. So the team isn't overly strong, but I think a lot of managers out there will have double or triple Liverpool sitting in their squads. There'll be a whole bunch of Luton defenders probably floating about the place as well, and so comparing to those types of teams, I am not in too bad of a shape. So I was hoping I could have a bit of a roll of the dice in bringing Salah in game week 25, as I knew that most managers wouldn't be able to obtain him without significant surgery. Now, if you missed the video last week, I was fully aware that Salah was very likely to be benched in that first game, that he would probably come on and play the last 30 minutes in the first game and then start the second game against Luton and play out that full fixture. And I was saying that part of that move was because I knew he would be a pretty big differential. However, I didn't quite imagine he would only be owned by 8 0.5% of the competition. He was a huge differential. I was very stoked with obviously his performance in that first match. This is again why I'm not too worried about bringing in good players if they are coming off the bench, because they can do some serious damage in the dying parts of fixtures. We kind of got a little bit lucky that he made it onto the pitch earlier than what was probably planned by the sports science teams or the physios or whoever it was recommending the minutes that Salah was probably of what he should be playing. So we were lucky he got on a little bit early, but then again, it was probably the additional time that he was forced to play that has probably re-aggravated this injury. Now, re-aggravated is probably a bit too strong of a description. The early reports are that he was struggling from muscle fatigue in the hamstring, whatever that means. They didn't say muscle tightness, it was muscle fatigue, so I'm not entirely sure on exactly what that injury is. Now, it does sound pretty minor, all things considered, but it was enough to keep him out of the team sheet completely for that Luton fixture. He was not even on the bench, and Klopp still isn't sure if he'll be available for the Carabao Cup final in a few days' time. Now, Salah did play until the final whistle against Brentford, so it's not as though he re-injured himself. But the stand down is a bit worrisome, especially considering the extremely weak side that Liverpool did field against Luton. You would have thought if there was any chance of playing him and they just didn't quite want to risk it, they probably would have put him in, given how weak the team was. But he wasn't in the squad. So with the injury news and the fact that he missed the second game completely, his investment in, well, obviously game week 26 is obviously going to be probably non-existent, although I do see that there are about a few 100,000 managers who did or have already brought Salah into their team. But part of the reasoning for me bringing Salah in game week 25 was to lock in that cheap price point of 13.0 million. And that is unlikely to change over the next couple of game weeks given what has happened. So that's kind of that was kind of part of the decision making process, and so I do not have any fears that Salah is going to go up and out of my reach. I've got currently 0.2 million sitting in the bank, and I will go into some future planned transfers because that 0.2 million is basically all spent and will be at 0.0 million for my current planned transfers over the next couple of game weeks. But as of right now, it is very hard to tell whether or not Salah will be starting in game week 27. So if it is looking dubious, I don't really want to be holding a 13.0 million asset through the blank in game week 26 as I had initially planned when I brought him in. Especially if he's not even likely going to be there in game week 27. And so I am looking at the prospects of doing a bit of a Salah hokey cokey, because I will be wanting Salah back in game week 27 if he is at all fit. So I would ideally like to avoid selling Salah, as I am effectively a transfer up on everyone else who is planning to bring Salah in for game week 27 should he be available. And given the way that I think a lot of the teams are going to be shaping up out there, a lot of managers will be playing with 10 men or less, or they will be taking hits to bring in some pretty punty assets, I think, in midfield. And so I'm not too averse to playing with 10 men this week, considering the punts plus the 4-point hit for all those other managers will probably not hurt me too much. But then, of course, there's the De Bruyne issue. So, De Bruyne's benching in the second fixture did not come as much of a surprise to me, given how he actually performed in that first match. So, apart from one peach of a ball that he landed on Haaland's head, which should have been an easy goal for the Norwegian assassin, De Bruyne's crossing into the box was highly inaccurate throughout that entire match. So most of his deliveries were overhit, missing everyone in the box and quite often heading out towards the sideline. And for those that did manage to find a City attacker, they were all at head height, landing around Doku to attack, who is probably the worst outfield player to be trying to compete in aerial duels. Doku is not known for his skill with his head. He is very much a ball on the floor at his feet, taking on defenders using body feints and trying to work in and around the edge of the 18. He's not really jumping up, going for aerial duels with the tall defenders that were in and around him. So De Bruyne's crossing and accuracy was just completely all over the place. And on top of that, he looked tired. Like really tired, especially towards the end of the fixture. So I was fully expecting a benching from Pep, given what happened in that first match, but I was fairly confident that he'd come on for the last parts of the match in that second fixture. But to my surprise, and probably the surprise of many others, he was left rooted to the bench for the entirety of the match. Now this adds obvious cause for concern for the Bournemouth fixture coming up this weekend. And I have absolutely no idea why De Bruyne did not make it onto the pitch. I don't know if something went on in the back room, if he's a lot less fit than well, he should have been able to get on and play 30 minutes at the end of the match. I just don't understand why he was benched. I don't think he performed so badly that he should have just missed out the game completely either. So perhaps Pep is saving him for other fixtures. I don't know if he was saving him for other fixtures, whether or not he'd be saving him for the Bournemouth fixture. And so if he was left on the bench for those reasons, there's probably even less likelihood that it will be risked against Bournemouth if that was the reasoning, with Champions League fixtures coming up and some other tough games. They've got Man United coming up in game week 27 or 28 and Liverpool in 27 or 28. Which way around was that? Probably should have just pulled this up. So they got Man United in 27 at home and Liverpool away in 28. And the Champions League fixture is just after game week 27, just after the Man United fixture. That's the second leg against Copenhagen, which I think they're up 3-1. Actually, I can go back and check that. What did they score in that Copenhagen match? City, 3-1 win. And they do have the FA Cup 5th round fixture just before game week 27 too, but that is away to Luton. So it's a little bit up in the air as to exactly which fixtures De Bruyne is going to play, why he was benched, or what is going on. So I've got two main issues in my midfield. Salah obviously without the game and potentially injured, and De Bruyne who we have no idea what was happening. So my main transfer that I'm looking to do this week though is to bring Ollie Watkins back into the squad in replacement of Semenyo up front. Now, I am aware, obviously, that Bournemouth do double in game week 28, and holding Semenyo for that was a thought that was crossing my mind, but Ollie Watkins is just the glaring omission to my current team. And with the next 3 fixtures looking prime for continued returns from Watkins and his pretty big ownership at the moment, I need to bring him in this week. So this will cost me a hit, as I will need to move funds out of midfield and switch to a 3-4-3 formation, as I only have 1 free transfer in the bank. So it really comes down to, is it Salah out or De Bruyne out in order to fund this move? Now, I've had a bit of a play around with a transfer planner, which I won't go into now, as my plans could change, and we can go through that in future videos. But with the players that I want to bring into my team, including holding on to Salah, well, my options are to hold Salah through this blank and hope that he's ready for game week 27. Or if I do sell Salah in order to buy Watkins this week, I will be buying Salah back into my team once he's deemed fit, even as early as game week 27. And with the way that that all shapes up, first of all, whoever I sell out of De Bruyne or Salah needs to go all the way down to a 5.0 million asset or less for my 5th midfielder. Depending on who it doesn't matter who I sell, I need to go down to a 5.0 million asset. And if I do sell Salah this week for a hit, I will almost certainly, if he is fit and ready for game week 27, it will cost me another hit in order to bring Salah back. And all of this assumes that I don't miss any price rises or cop any price drops to players that are involved in my planned transfers. Now, I've also updated my chip strategy, and I'm now committing to a free hit in game week 29, as my team, with the current assets that I own, would only have about 2 or 3 players playing that week. So whoever I buy into my squad for 5.0 million or less, I'm not actually handcuffed into having to buy players specifically for game week 29, because I am committing to a free hit in game week 29. So the 5.0 million price point immediately rules out any Wolves player as an option. And to be honest, the only player that I would look to buy from Wolves is Pedro Neto, and he is just well over the 5 million price point that I am looking at. And if I did go for Neto this week, it would just mean that I would have to take an additional hit down the line, and I don't actually think Neto will score enough points to warrant that hit in future, especially considering that the player that I do bring in this week is probably only going to play game week 26 in my squad. I did own Hwang Hee-chan earlier this season, and having watched him very closely over the few games in which I owned him, I have zero plans to buy him again. I will not go into the reasons, as it does not really paint a great picture of Hwang Hee-chan, but he is far from my thoughts to be bringing in. Now, Hwang Hee-chan is on penalties, and of course any penalty taker does have the chance to score goals, but I am looking for players with multiple routes to points, and that are actually are looking for hard-working players that are likely to get a few chances within a match, which Hwang Hee-chan has to get quite lucky in order to achieve, I believe. So I'm also not looking to buy any Bournemouth or Luton players in this midfield spot in order to prepare for the double in game week 28 for a couple of reasons. One is I think it's a pretty long shot of a play. I do not see any outstanding assets at Bournemouth or Luton in these midfield spots that I would like to punt on. And additionally, if I did want to punt on one of those players, I would have to bench a single game weeker that could easily outscore a punt on any player from these two teams. As I mentioned, this player will really only feature in my team for game week 26, assuming that there are no other injuries or surprise benchings that occur within my team. So it's not really a 1 week punt, because they will stay in my team for a couple of game weeks, but they will be routed to the bench past game week 26. So it is kind of a 1 week punt in terms of actually starting this player within my squad. Now, at the 5 million price point, there is really only one option that I am happy to bring in, and that will be Garnacho at United. Now, Garnacho has been one of the main consistent performers at United in the last few game weeks. Now, not necessarily consistent in terms of FPL price returns. In fact, I'm not even sure what Garnacho has been returning over the last couple of game weeks. I should probably check that out. 5-16. Okay, so it's pretty decent. But besides the point returns, he is basically the only player at United that looks to be nailed on playing good football. He's a really hard working player, gets himself into some pretty good positionings on the pitch, and looks to be pulling the trigger quite often. He is a player that likes to shoot. And now with Højlund managing to get amongst the goals, it's like 6 goals in 6 Premier League matches, or 7 and 6, or something to that effect. He's doing very well. Garnacho does have someone else that he could potentially be feeding in order to convert any assists that are in front of him. And if Rashford and or Bruno manage to find their shooting boots again, then Garnacho down at 5 million price point could be a really good play. So as of right now, on the way that the team is performing, I think I'd put Garnacho as the second most likely player to score a goal at United from open play behind Højlund. And I'm actually looking forward to bringing him in as a differential for game week 26. Now, I'll just really quickly show you the effects of the future transfer plans. So this is not my team. Let's reset that. So my team right now kind of looks like this. Definitely holding Palmer through and Pedro Porro and Gusto. So Semenyo will go to Watkins. And let's just say it's Salah out right now. I'm about to go into how I'm going to decide between Salah and De Bruyne in a second. But this is to show you the future transfer plans. So this would give me this kind of squad. I cover the key player here, which is Watkins. This is the main reason that I am taking the hit. But it does give me a nice differential in Garnacho at home to Fulham this week, who could actually pull in a bit of a points haul. And this is, of course, assuming that De Bruyne plays. So that would be the hit in game week 26. If I roll forward to game week 27, now let's assume that Salah is back fit and ready. I would be benching Garnacho away to Man City. Salah would come back in for De Bruyne, and Foden would switch across to Heung-min Son at home to Crystal Palace. And as you can see at the top, that leaves me 0.0 million in the bank. So it is very touch and go any price rises from any of these players or any price drops from any of the players involved in those transfers would price me out of this deal for the cost of 4 points in game week 27. I will be obviously watching the price changes very, very closely. So who to sell out of Salah or De Bruyne? So let's say that we find out that Salah will miss the Carabao Cup final. Now that would be 8 days since the conclusion of the Brentford fixture, which is the last time that Salah appeared out on the pitch. So it would have been 8 days from the Brentford fixture to missing the Carabao Cup final. Now that's probably within the right amount of rest period for some sort of hamstring tightness or muscle fatigue or whatever it is that's going on with him, assuming that it isn't more severe than what we have been led on to believe. They then have 3 days until the FA Cup 5th round tie against Southampton, and then another 3 days until game week 27 against Nottingham Forest. So that would be a total of, so assuming he misses nothing, assuming he misses everything right up until game week 27 against Nottingham Forest, that would be a total of about 14 days rest to recover from the hamstring tightness, which should be more than enough. The risk here is that it could be worse than either what's thought or being reported. Now, it is the same hamstring that took him out of the AFCON competition, and we have seen other players in the past reported to be coming back sooner and then ending up to be out for a very long period of time. I'm specifically thinking about Sven Botman here, who I commented on way earlier in the season, and the reason that I was a bit worried about that was it was a knee injury. Hamstrings, I think, are probably a little bit more cut and dry in terms of injuries, and so I do kind of expect that Salah will probably be back for that Nottingham Forest fixture in game week 27, assuming he doesn't play any of the other matches and further cause complications to that hamstring. Now, I know I want Salah back into the team, as I've just shown you on the transfer planner. So if I do sell him to obtain the funds to buy Watkins this week, I'll need another transfer in a week or two to bring him back in. And ideally, I'd like to avoid this. So if Salah is going to be fit game week 27, I'd just like to hold him through game week 26 as I had initially planned, as I do not think that that 11th spot that people will be looking to fill up with differentials is too worrying in terms of rank hits that I will probably lose out on. So however, the only other player that I could sell in order to bring Watkins in is De Bruyne, who will be leaving my team after the Bournemouth fixture regardless of what happens. So if I do this, so if we find out that De Bruyne is out completely for that Bournemouth fixture, I will be selling De Bruyne, holding on to Salah and crossing my fingers that Salah is back fit and ready for game week 27. So it's a bit of a pickle, really. Like, it's an injured Salah or a surprise benching De Bruyne, with Man City coming up with some very tricky games in the future and predicting minutes. I mean, I don't mind playing De Bruyne off the bench at the best of times, but if he's going to miss out games entirely, even if he is on the squad, the team sheet, let's remember he was sitting on the bench in gear for that fixture, the second fixture in the double, so he was fit enough ready to play, and he just did not get onto the pitch. And so that is a lot more worrying. That like 30 minutes at the end of the game I'll happily take because Bruyne could come on and get a double-digit return. But if he's going to miss out games entirely, then that is quite different altogether. Obviously can't get any points at that point. Now, considering I am free hitting in game week 29, if I don't get Salah back before game week 28, and I think in game week 28 is actually when they play Man City. Yeah, so Forest in 27 and then City in game week 28. It means that I'll actually be pushing it out probably till about game week 30, because game week 29 I'll be free hitting, and if I don't buy him in 28 it'll be 30 plus. So either way, all paths involved here would mean that I would need to buy Salah back for a hit. So if I do sell Salah this week, it means I am nullifying the injury risk, and the injury risk here is that we eventually find out that he's potentially re-injured his hamstring. And so the additional hit to buy him back is kind of justified in my mind, as I'll avoid holding Salah through the blank just to find out that he's potentially way more injured than what we think. And so to avoid that risk, taking a 4-point hit in future to bring Salah back is probably preferable. But if De Bruyne misses out on the Bournemouth fixture entirely too, I mean, I don't want to be playing with 9 men this week, and I do have to sell one of them in order to get Watkins in. As long as I've got Watkins in my team, I do not think I can get hurt too much, and I do think Garnacho for either Salah or De Bruyne is a pretty good punt for a 1-week play. And playing with 10 men, I am not too averse to doing. I mean, probably best case here, De Bruyne is confirmed in for the Bournemouth game. I can play my triple city. I sell Salah for Garnacho, bring in Watkins, have 11 men playing, and then hope that Watkins and Garnacho can earn enough points to pay for that 4-point hit in order to bring Salah back into my team in about game week 27. So alright, that wraps up this video. So remember to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And until next time, I'll catch you again shortly. Cheers.